I just stole all this jewelry. Got you now.
Are you going to handcuff her?
Yes.
Do you know how?
Handcuffing on hand.
Do you know how? Oh, proper handcuffing can be so important. So that's a silly little video, and it's just an intro to our course here. Our course, we're going to do handcuff familiarization. So our objectives today are to familiarize ourselves with the different parts of the handcuffs, and we're also going to familiarize ourselves with the different reasons for applying the handcuffs and the different methods, and those two will go hand in hand, as you'll see as we go through this training. So the first part of our training here, we're going to take a little look and we're going to see about the parts of the handcuffs. So right here we have the keyhole. This is the double lock, and the bar over here that you saw for just a second is the double bar. The bar that I pushed on and the bar that spins around, that's called the single bar. You can see the teeth along there. Here we have a handcuff key, and on this back side you'll see a peg. It slides in there to the double lock, and the double lock is pretty important. We'll get to that here in just a minute. And then the other end of the handcuff key is just a standard key. If you turn it one direction, it will undo the double lock. And if you turn it the other, it will undo the main handcuff. You cannot unlock the handcuff or even make the handcuff tighter as long as the double lock is engaged. So that's the importance of the double lock. You can see I put it in place and squeeze, and you can't squeeze those any tighter. The reason for that is twofold. One, it protects the inmate physically, or the suspect, as it's impossible to wrench those handcuffs down harder, creating injuries to the wrists. The other reason is it protects you as well, but your protection is more in a civil liability claim. Because if you do not engage the double locks and the inmate wrenches those down as hard as they can and cuts off circulation, or even gives themselves a fracture in the wrist area, they can say the officer just wrenched them down and was being a jerk about it, and you really want to protect yourself. So we're protecting the inmate by making sure that they can't get hurt with them, and we're also protecting ourselves and ensuring that we don't leave ourselves open to being sued. So we're going to move on. So like I said, we're going to talk about the different ways to handcuff. We have one method in front of the body, and we have two different methods behind the back. Sounds a little odd. Why would you have two different methods behind the back? But you'll see that here in a second. So front handcuffing, you'll see that a lot. You see it when a lot of the courtroom shots when the suspects are walking in. You'll see front handcuffs. Pregnant women are always handcuffed in the front. And anytime you're in prison, if you're moving an inmate through another area with other inmates, you would ideally not handcuff them in that scenario, but if you do, you handcuff them in the front. The reasons for handcuffing in the front are for inmate protection. As soon as you put those handcuffs on somebody, you greatly inhibit their ability to defend themselves. And that can include from falls, from something as simple as a fall. That's the reason that you'll see that women that are pregnant are handcuffed in the front always. Doesn't matter what their custody level is, doesn't matter what their charge is. If a woman is pregnant, whether it's a week or 8 months, she will always be handcuffed in the front, because if she falls, she needs to be able to catch herself. Because again, that not only does that open you up to civil liability if something happens to her or her baby, but just general human decency. You don't want anything to happen to her or her baby. And if you ever handcuff in the back and she falls, that's going to be a bad day for her. So let me get this started. We'll do handcuffs in front. Oh, the other time you'll do handcuffs in front is, say you're escorting a suspect or an inmate and you're taking them to the doctor, for example. You're not always going to be right there with the inmate, which means you can't hold on to them, which means they're vulnerable. So they're going to have their hands in front so that if they fall, they don't hurt themselves. Without further ado, let's get on and see how this works. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to move the clothing up out of the way. You don't want anything between the metal, and the skin. So as you can see, I pointed out that the cuff key is going towards me, right there. And the double bar is up. The double bars, just to make it easy, will always be up. The reason, well, we'll get to the reason for the keyhole in a second. As you can see right there, I measured to make sure the handcuff wasn't too tight or too loose. I stuck my finger in, saw it got a little too far, tightened it up just a little bit, made sure that the handcuff could slide up and down the wrist, but not past the ridge of the thumb or the base of the hand. And I did the double lock. And I'm going to do the same thing to the other wrist. Size it up. It fits. We're going to double lock it. All right. So the reason the double bars are up and the lock is facing towards me is because at this moment, if I need to unlock those for whatever reason, if I need to unlock those handcuffs, then the key, I can just have the inmate lift their hands right up and get right to the keyhole. And it takes 2 seconds to unlock. And that's really a safety issue. If the keyholes were facing the inmate, then I would have to get my shoulder into them. I'd have to get my arm up close to them. That leaves me really vulnerable, not just for a headbutt, but also in some cases if the inmate's a biter, and that happens a lot. So you want those keyholes facing away from the inmate so you can get those off as quick as possible without opening yourself up to any harm by the inmate. So next we have our first of the two different ways we'll have handcuffs behind the back. The only difference in these two methods is handcuff key, the keyhole towards the inmate or towards the hands. Generally speaking, you always want the key towards the inmate's body, which is away from the hands. That precludes any funny business with them messing with the lock generally. As you can see, the palms are both out, the backs of the hands are together and the thumbs are up. Generally, that alleviates about 95% of the problems, but you have some skilled individuals out there who can still get themselves twisted around. And so you just want to make it harder for those people by making sure that the keyhole is farther away from the fingers. Maybe they pocketed a key or a shim or something like that. So you want that keyhole away from there. So you can see, making sure that the key is facing up and away. Double bars are facing out. Do the double lock. And again, double bars facing out. And we're going to make sure they fit, and we're going to do the double lock. So I keep pointing out that the double bars are up, and the reason for that is because of that double lock. That double lock it's going to protect, it's just one more thing there that keeps them from slipping their handcuffs. It is possible to use force and gravity to undo that double lock, but it's very unlikely because almost always you're going to be there watching the inmate. As long as they have handcuffs on, you should always have eyes on them, whether they're in front or behind. They should be able to be seen by you. And again, that's for protection and to cover yourself for a liability issue. You can see my hand position here. Since we're cuffing behind and an inmate is not able to catch themselves if they fall, at a minimum, you will always have a hand above the wrist, above the handcuff. And sometimes you'll even have two, depending on if they're having trouble walking, something like that. Because again, we always want a hand on the inmate to make sure that they can't fall. We don't want to open them up to injury, and we don't want to open ourselves up to a lawsuit. And this is our final handcuff position. You're going to see we're going to have the handcuffs here. We're going to have them with the keys actually facing the hands this time. And the reason for this is only done in very few situations. This will be done when you're removing individuals from a cell that were either involved in a fight with each other, or if they're high security inmates, that cannot come out of the cell without being handcuffed. So what will happen is there's a slot on the cells, a slot for the food trays. You'll open it up and you'll have them turn around and stick their hands out the slot, and you'll apply the handcuffs. And so the reason that the keys are going down towards the hands this time, because they're going to enter the cell and stick their hands back out in that same manner. And if you have the keyholes on the far side, up by their hands, up by their wrists, away from their hands, then you're going to have to get in over their hands, and you risk injuring them in attempting to remove the handcuffs. It also opens you up. It has you with your arm too far into the cell. Even while handcuffed, they could still grab your arm, and if they grab your arm and then just drop their weight, they're going to snap your arm against the inside edge of that door, possibly breaking your forearm. And nobody wants that to happen. So again, we'll watch here. You'll see we're still going to have the double bars up because that's where our double lock is. But this time we're going to have the keyhole facing us. And everything else is going to be the same. We're going to cinch them down to where they can't get out. Make sure they have enough room. Cinch them down. And now we're going to apply our double locks. Again, thumbs up, palms facing out so they can't readily grab something. So there you have it. We have our objectives here. We're going to familiarize ourselves with the different parts of the handcuffs. We went over that on that first slide where we had the double bar, the single bar, the handcuff keyhole, and the double lock. And we had the handcuff key, and the end of that had the little nub that goes in and actually activates that double lock. And we also familiarized ourselves with the different methods of handcuffing. We had the in front that you would use for pregnant women and general escorting out in the civilian world, like if you had to take somebody to the doctor where you're not always going to have hands on them. So they're in front so they can protect themselves from the falls. We had two different methods for behind the back. We had with the keys down towards the hands for the high security inmates that cannot leave the cell without handcuffs. So we have the keys towards the hands to facilitate taking the handcuffs off through the food tray slot. And then we have the handcuffs with the keyholes up in the back. And that's just a general escort throughout the institution. If somebody needs to have handcuffs on, but they're not a high security threat. I hope you found this training informative and have a great day.